Hey everybody, I'm at an event in London, Kentucky called Verdant Vibes. It's a music and arts festival. There's poetry as well, and hopefully I can speak to some of the artists and performers today, and vendors too. I'll catch you later. Alright, we've got Michaeljon here. Tell us what you got here, Michaeljon.
Oh, this is a mountain dulcimer with a accompanying bee here. Mountain dulcimer. This one's made from quilted maple, cherry, and vertical grain fir. This is the Kentucky state instrument. You don't need any skills or talent to play them, as I'll show you right now.
Okay.
One finger's all you need. So these were invented in Appalachia around the Civil War when they wanted a way of controlling. So it's not a guitar, so it's not super loud, and it was a ladies' instrument, so they could play this and it wouldn't wake up the kids. But they used it more for training and passing on family stories. And so around Appalachia, these things were a lot more durable than a banjo or a guitar.
Wow.
Because they didn't have roads back in the good old days, and they were walking with a lot of stuff. And so there's such a rich history of this instrument in this area. And for me to come here from California to do this, it's kind of a culture shock, but everybody comes to me frequently and says, I know this guy who was a famous builder, or my sister-in-law did that. And so everybody has a connection to it, and especially around here. Now, when I would do shows in California and in my gallery in California when I first started doing these 20 years ago, people would have no idea what they were. But during the hippie era, they were very popular. So Joni Mitchell had them. The Grateful Dead played with them.
Oh, wow.
The Rolling Stones played with them. So it was a certain time of the year, about 1960s, where the hippies were kind of trying to come up with new folk music and stuff like that. So they became kind of a popular deal. So the only thing with dulcimer music, it's usually they're always telling a story. So instead of being a very happy song, like, more it's like, cow got run over the moon, whatever it is.
So
something,
they talk
something's
over
very
it?
Something's
Yeah.
very droll and or it's really high pitched, singing and a lot of amazing grace and that kind of stuff. So it depends on who you are and what you were from. But different locations had different styles of dulcimer.
Okay. So this is a
Kentucky dulcimer.
Okay.
And this would be more of a West Virginia style. So what made it different is the Kentucky has a single back like that, and the back section like this. So this one here's 4 strings.
Okay.
Versus this style, which has a double back. You can see the back on the side.
Yeah. Okay.
And then this one's made with Honduras mahogany and Philippine mahogany and wenge. So it has different wood. So when I started making these years ago, my mother-in-law, who had moved to Kentucky, had a dulcimer, and she damaged it, and so she asked me if I could fix it for her. I said, sure, if it's wood, I can kill it. And so I fixed it for her and redid it and then restrung it. And I said, well, I got to make sure it's right. So I tried to find out how to do it and tuned it. And like, hey, I can, and the first song I did, and that's kind of where it went downhill from there. And the thing is, I can play things that I can't play on a guitar. Okay. I can play on this because it doesn't require chords. And my old, ancient fingers don't like doing, bending like that anymore.
Yeah.
So it became one of those things with me. It's just kind of an obsession. And it also, I've been collecting wood since I was in junior high school, and I got to use it. I mean, it's so. And then all my scraps, of course, my wife uses to make her art, and she's a adjudicated artist with the Kentucky Craft Guild, and so she's famous. And I'm retired for all intent and purpose. For decades, all I did was custom furniture.
Okay.
And mostly in San Francisco, Napa, anywhere where people had gazillions of dollars and wanted to spend it with somebody like me.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of stuff like that. So as a diversion, and it's one of those things where I can get one piece of wood that would be left over from making a rocking chair, let's say.
Yeah.
I can't make another rocking with that piece, but it's a nice wood. You don't want to toss it. So all these are just 1/8 inch thick pieces of wood. So we cut them down real thin and you manipulate it. So there's an art to it, and there's a craft to it, but it's also an instrument that has to be demonstrated to sell them. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the Gibsons and the Fenders of the world don't make these. So there's only one or two companies that actually mass produce them. So they're almost always made by guys like me.
Wow.
So it carries that tradition on too.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where the funny part about it is most of the dulcimer makers that are famous are all teachers too.
Wow.
So I think it was part of the educational process that they would make dulcimers for classes, because I get a lot of people say, "Oh, we learned how to play that in elementary school." I mean, I don't know if they do that nowadays, but there was a thing that they were doing not too long ago where they're trying to get people to make inexpensive dulcimers and give them to schools and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I always thought that was a great idea just to keep it live. But now it's all about getting woodshop back into schools, because the problem I saw coming down the pike. My dad was in the public education for a gazillion years, and so we're all kind of teachers anyway. All of my sisters are teachers, and I teach woodworking, and so. But in that, it's the people that do dulcimers is one of those things. They're keeping the folk art alive and the music end of it alive, and that's one of the things with dulcimers too. They're a folk art thing as well, because they look really cute hanging on the wall.
They do.
And
it's very Picasso looking.
Yeah, and especially with the hourglass style like this, it became kind of a Kentucky tradition.
Yeah, and you know what? This is the first time that I've heard a dulcimer being played, so thank you for
right,
that.
but you've probably heard it on some things.
But not like
and
this,
it's not to be construed with. There's a hammer dulcimer, and that's more of a Chinese instrument, and it was this type of thing, but it's basically the same thing. It's just there's more strings, and but that's instrument that goes back 3,000 years. That's the predecessor to a piano, whereas these were solely just an American instrument. Civil War came along, and they didn't want to do a banjo, and the guitar just couldn't hold up in the extreme weather we have here, but these would, because they're not made like a guitar. They're not have all the fancy bracings and the voicings that you have to do it. And it's one of those deals where they can be tuned to a female voice, which is even nicer.
Yeah.
And if they're trying to lullaby the kid to sleep, you can have one here. I mean, it's that. And then the other neat thing now that we're starting to do is music therapy for Alzheimer patients.
Okay.
It's really fascinating. You'll play like a Buddy Holly song to an Alzheimer patient, and they know the words.
Wow.
And you're like, that is such a trip. And you're like, wow, what other song? And then so you start researching old songs, and they know all the words all of a sudden.
Oh my
and you're
gosh,
like, how does that even happen? You can't even get me breakfast kind of things. But no, and then they know all the songs, and they can sing along with. So
It's
there's
the emotional memory.
Well, and I think it just triggers something. If you look at a brainwave, they're little files. Think of a computer age, but they're little files, and that little doorway opens up because you hear that note. And it's the way with me too. I was a DJ in the 70s and the 80s in nightclubs.
Okay.
I will hear a song, and I can smell the cigarette smoke in my head.
Wow.
Or in my case, I was California, so it was mostly beer and cheap whiskey and bad perfume. But those certain songs will trigger that in me. I'm like, wow, that is so weird. And in those days, I used to drink a lot, and so I only used it for good, never for bad. But literally, I remember going, gosh, I must have been really drunk then, because I remember it. And they say if you did something when you're drunk, you may not remember it. Well, no, I remember it all. That's why I'm so glad we didn't have Facebook or anything like that. No, because
You know, have you heard of this concept that our memories are not actually in our brain, that they're in our toroidal field?
Right,
Have you heard that?
yeah.
So that's interesting with the music is of the vibration, you know?
Well, and that's the thing too. There's also called a revelry harp, so they give terminal patients, and it's played like this, and they just kind of wear it, and so they don't really have to play it, but they just feel the rhythm and the music, and of course when you play it like this, you feel it a lot more, and that triggers things in them too, because you'll see them smile and stuff like that, where a lot of times they're just very stoic and kind of checked out, but they'll wake right up and they're like, wow, so music therapy is a big thing. Of course, I'm not musically inclined. I don't read music. I don't I couldn't tell you what chord this is. Don't
really?
know.
So you're just like playing off the...
Oh yeah, this is totally guessing. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, you said you can play little boxes. Shall we do that?
Okay, here we go. You know the words?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I get the right key. Not. And about. You know what? Let me change.
Little boxes.
This one might be easier.
That sounds like you're gonna need the baritone.
Worst part is I like these guys' songs. They're really good.
Shall we just listen to them?
No.
We can try this and then we'll go. I want to listen to them too.
I'm trying to hear you or that.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
We'll try it later when it's quiet.
But one of the things I do the farmers market here in London every year. Well, part of the thing we do is for mentoring young artists, trying to bring them along, and we recruit people, and because I'm taught by a gazillion people. I didn't just open books and learn this stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody I've bugged to learn how to do it. So I always feel it's like kind of bring people along, and especially with artists where they're nervous about it, and they don't know what to do. But for me, it's more of a playing in a groups where you can't be disturbed by somebody walking up to you and stuff. So you still kind of play through it.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing for me to do. And playing with other people, because most of the time I'm like, oh, that's so cool, and I'm like, oh, and then I get lost, and then. But I was at a show in Berea last weekend, and a dulcimer teacher comes walking up, and I was playing. She goes, you played that wrong, and I go, I don't even know what I'm playing. What are you playing? And she goes, you know what you're playing. I'm like, no, I don't know what that song is. And then I played her another. She goes, well, that's the March of the Fairies or something like that. I'm like,
oh, wow, okay.
There's a name for that? And so I'm just thinking, because it's just stuff I picked, and with this is that you can come up with anything. I can do, totally something new. So you just come up with something.
I'll have to try it later.
Yeah. It's the easiest instrument in the world to play. They actually consider it the easiest instrument in the world to play. You only need one finger. This one has 4 strings, but you don't have to have that. But it's just. Then you can add flourishes to it. The band's leaving already. One of those things you can play them simply or in depth. A lot of the real serious dulcimer players will actually play chords. And they know how to read music, but it's not one of my strong suits.
Well, you can play something, so that's good.
Right. Well, the beautiful thing about a dulcimer is nobody knows what they sound like, so anybody that plays them sounds good.
I think, that sounds like my kind of. Yeah.
Well, and then there's another version of it.
Ooh, what is that?
This is called a Welsh stick dulcimer.
Okay.
So it's basically the same idea, except in Wales they use these as walking sticks and to fend off critters. But it's more of
As
a
you do.
neat about these is they're relatively indestructible.
It sounds like it'll make the critters dance instead.
So traditionally, that's the way these handles are made. They're made as walking sticks, and they would usually have a point on it. So you would walk around with it, and then when you wanted to play a tune, you had this with you. And so it's kind of a tradition. So these predate these, although they're the same kind of thing. But what's neat about this is, so if you imagine this is one piece of wood that's this thick, and then you slice it, and then bend it. So that's what makes the bout here. And then you take the back, which was right going down the middle of this, and then you laminate that, and that's how you get the back of these. So it's a very economical instrument to make, so you just need one piece of wood to make it work.
It's amazing.
And then I add, a lot more to it to make it, get the price up.
All right, yeah.
But
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's one of those other things where it's like, when you got a lot of little leftover pieces, what do you do with it? Well, you do that, or you do something like this with it.
This point over there. Yeah, well, that was wonderful. Thank you. I really enjoyed that.
Well, anytime later after you do your thing, come by and I'll teach you how to play.
Yeah.